gentlemen, we're going to begin our very important discussion of water. Water requires foresight and wisdom. Just as a soft point, I happen to know when I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, there are areas of this parish which, for whatever reason, were built with water pipes that are sufficient for the houses, but not sufficient for a fire hydrant. So this raises their household homeowners insurance and means that they are dependent on usually a volunteer fire department to come out with tanks of water in case they have a kitchen fire that gets out of hand. Now, can you imagine how expensive it would be to dig up and replace the water pipes? Foresight is very important. Water, if I may just say one more item, water is, I think, the issue of the 21st century. It is important the world over. If you look at these wonderful satellite maps that we now have of planet Earth, you can see the spread of deserts around the world. And you may well know that on our planet, close to 1 billion people have, and you know, we use water for not just drinking, but cooking and bathing and laundry. Nearly 1 billion people have no more water than we use in one day, than we use in 2 or 3 flushes of the toilet. We are very blessed here to have wonderful water supplies, and we want to know how to use them, and we thank you. So I'm going to begin now. We have wonderful speakers here. We have Mr. Craig Gautreaux from Louisiana Utilities, and we have Mr. Harold Scheffler, a citizen activist who has been working on this issue since about 1968. Then we have Mr. Gautreaux will speak a second time. Ms. Bess Fournette is going to speak to us. She's also from LUS and talk to us about rainwater. And then finally, we will be hearing from Dr. David Sheremy about the Bayou Vermilion. I'm learning as I go. I hope to talk about the Bayou Vermilionville Water District. So thank you all for being here. The League of Women Voters is nearly 100 years old. Men and women and everybody are welcome to join, and please consider joining our league. We make studies of issues, and never in our history have we supported any political candidate. With that, I would like to begin with Mr. Craig Gautreaux, who is going to talk about management of water from the source to the faucets.
All right, how y'all doing today? My name is Craig Gautreaux. I'm the Water and Wastewater Operations Manager for Lafayette Utility System. I've been working for the city since 1989, so I've been around a while. The basic primer for water is that EPA back in 1974 set the rules. They told us what contaminants to look for, what to report, and how we were going to treat it. And that is nationwide. And then from there, it was up to the Department of Health and Hospitals to determine how all these enforcement issues will take place. As far as what type of primary contaminants we're going to have to be looking for, and what type of secondary contaminants. You have your primaries are your organics, your arsenics, your bariums, your chromiums, stuff in the source water that should not be there, but we have to look for it. And if it is there, it's my job to get it out. The secondary standards are things like iron, manganese, the stuff that makes water colorful. Those are not enforceable items as far as EPA is concerned. It's not a very pretty water when you have brown water coming into your tub. So I've been in the direction of get the color out. That's what I do. I make it clear. And I want to be sure that all of our customers have clear water wherever we serve it. We spend a fortune of money getting these things, these plants in proper shape, so that provide the customers the kind of water, the kind of purity of the water that they deserve and they demand. And that's my job. Want to go on to the next one?
Want to go to the next speaker?
No, next question, whatever.
Oh, well, we will take some time for a couple of questions. You haven't used all your time.
Well,
I'm sorry, you are going to speak a second time.
But I got other stuff, like the source and preparation. You know, it's, y'all send me a couple little questions to answer
Yeah,
here.
oh, yes. Oh, please, go ahead and speak for about 10 minutes, I think it is.
Okie dokie. Well, the sources and preparation. Where does your water come from? Basically, your water comes from the Chico Aquifer. It's about a 9,000 square miles going from Vermilion River, basically, all the way to East Texas, and all the way from the Gulf to Alexandria area. It's a huge underwater, I'll call it a giant bathtub of water. Where we get our water from in the city of Lafayette, we have wells of maybe 18 to 20 wells that we have drilled between 400 and 600 feet down in the ground to provide the water to my 2 water treatment facilities, which can treat up to 50 million gallons a day if needed. We are ready. We treat basically about 20 million gallons a day that you normally see on an everyday occurrence. But when the droughts hit during the summertime, we can push the plants as much as we can, but the only problem is that our pipe sizes, it wasn't designed to put 36-inch pipes from the water plant all the way to Broussard. The pipes were designed for the city. They weren't designed to go outside the parish, so I can't push a mega amount of water out towards the end of the parish. But internally, we have the water, we have the pressure, we have the pipe sizes capable of supporting whatever we need. The residents and the wells themselves range from about 300 to 600 feet, and they're monitored daily. The water comes into the water treatment plants. We add chlorine to it to eliminate the iron that might be in the water. It oxidizes it, it forms an iron precipitate. We bring the water into our treatment units where we add polyphosphate, we add lime, and we add alum. Because what we're going to do now is the Chico Aquifer has different hardnesses of water. Our particular water is coming out of the wells, it's a little bit hard, and people get used to, say, a Baton Rouge water that might have a hardness of, say, 80 parts per million. You'll feel like the water doesn't want to rinse off of you. It feels like it's oily. Where real hard water, you can put as much soap into your washing machine and you'll never get any suds. So we have to find a delicate balance for our residents where they are most comfortable. And for us, it's around 100 to 110 parts per million of hardness. And so we treat it with lime to reduce that hardness, to make it more palatable, to make it the washing machine do its job, that it doesn't cost you as much money in laundry and soap and taking a shower and shampoo, all that stuff. So it's there, and this is what we do. And then after that, after it passes through that process, we chlorinate it again, and we pass it through the filters that takes out any precipitate that might be occurring from the lime and the alum collection. And then it goes into our storage system. Well, our storage system consists of about 4 million gallons of elevated storage from the water towers that you see around town. What you don't see is the other 8 million of ground storage that we have scattered around our plants. From there, we treat that water and we store it as much as we can. And then at night, we refill all these towers up. We fill the ground storage up. In the morning, we'll start using that water in the ground storage because we want that water fresh. We don't want stagnant water sitting in our ground storage tanks because the longer it sits around, the more possibility it has for coliform organisms to develop in our water. Coliforms inherently are everywhere. If you touch your fingers, you have coliforms on it. We do not like coliforms in water systems. So we chlorinate a lot, all right, to be sure that the water is safe, especially on the ends of the system. We want to be sure everybody has a good source of water. That is our protection for our water system. Our guys, our laboratory technicians, every day might go around the city taking 30 to 40 samples a day. And their primary job is to check for these coliform organisms and to be sure that the chlorine residuals on the end of our systems are at the right level, which might mean 0.6, 0.7 milligrams per liter of chlorine. But the water is safe. You're not going to be harmed by it. Every now and then we get a coliform hit on the system, but generally what happens is you might have a little growth, especially during the summertime, on the faucets that we collect the water from. If we don't properly flame the tap, use a sterile bottle, have our hands in some gloves that we pretend to be doctors, lawyers, and surgeons, and collect that water, anything can happen, all right? But for the most part, they are very rare occurrences. And then if there is an occurrence, then our Department of Health and Hospitals is watching for us. They let us know, we report it. That's one of the reporting things. If it gets to be too many of them, then we're in violation, and the Department of Health and Hospitals could come in and come take a look at me and say, what are you doing? Why are you having this problem? We do not have that problem. Our water is safe. It is good. Again, the water stored in the wet wells, we use that wet well water first. Then we refill everything at night. But during the day, everything is, but we keep enough water. To be honest with you, we shut it down about halfway on the elevated towers because we never know when a fire is going to occur throughout the city. And if we have to have that additional pressure boost at that particular time in that particular area, we have it. It is ready to go. Let's see, what else we got? Elevated, storage. One of the questions is, how is our purity of our water secured? Our purity is the chlorine residual. At the treatment facilities, our treatment facilities are gated. They have cameras. The water's coming in is directly from a well, directly to a pipeline, to internally inside the plant. So nobody touches that water. It is very difficult for someone to get into my facility to try to throw something into the treatment units. You're talking millions and millions and millions of gallons of water. If there's going to be an incident, the incident will occur in the distribution system somewhere. And what I say by an incident is that somebody might be filling up a swimming pool with a hose. They accidentally hit a can of brake fluid into their swimming pool. A block away, somebody breaks a line while they were digging it with a contractor. Well, that water, you'll have a sudden drop of water pressure in the system. And if you have too much of a drop of water system pressure, you will have a backflow from that swimming pool through the hose into our distribution system. But the water is chlorinated. It's not gonna affect that many people at any particular time. It's not like we're gonna have an epidemic of a whole block of people being sick. That's not gonna happen. You might have a house of 2 or 3 people that all of a sudden, something's not right with the water. Flush, we'll go flush, repair it and flush. That is the key to the purity of the water, just flushing the lines. If you ever think you have a colored water issue in your home, flush the lines or give us a call and we're gonna go flush the lines. The water is safe, I can't stress that enough. The purity of water, the people in my laboratory are testing it every day for bacteriological, and they do it every day. And we watch it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're watching for y'all. And at that, I'll conclude. Thank y'all.
Well, thank you very much. If you would like, ladies and gentlemen, we have, about 5 minutes. If you would like to make maybe less than 1 minute questions, if you would please be concise, precise, and of course with decorum. And we'll have a 1 minute question followed by a 1 minute answer. The first hand I saw, was Mr. Woody.
Question for Mr. Cocho. I looked at a USGS report this morning that said that the Chico aquifer levels have declined about 50 feet since the beginning of industrial
is what he said for.
Okay, basically, he's seen a 50-foot drop since the Chico Aquifer has been pumped with all the wells throughout our 9,000 square miles. You're going to pump water out of the aquifer. At some point, this water's been there for thousands of years. And so you got hundreds and hundreds of feet of clear, fresh water. Different quality of water, might be a little hard, might be a little soft, but different qualities of water. But the water is very plentiful. Even if you had a 50-foot drop in the last 100 years, say, that's just too much water out there. The recharges on a daily basis. So we're getting water right now, maybe 100 years ago, that are just getting to the aquifer now from the different sources of the Red River and all those other rivers up on North Louisiana area. But again, it's something for us to watch for.
Well, thank you, very good. Tell me your full name. I'm trying to get everyone's name on the record.
Woody Martin.
Willie Martin.
Woody Martin.
Woody Martin. Thank you. All right, who's next? Yes, sir. And you'll have to tell me your name and ask your question quickly.
Huey Mitchell.
Huey Mitchell, thank you.
Craig, about a year or two ago, Melville developed a high arsenic content in their water. First, are they on the Chico Aquifer? And second, how does our arsenic level compare?
Our arsenic levels are probably the lowest in the state. Our Chico Aquifer is a great source of water. I'm not sure where Melville is sometimes along the river.
On the shelf above Cox Springs.
Above Cox Springs, yeah. Sometimes those areas along the rivers develop a pocket. And where they're drilling at is right in the pocket where all these sediments from many, many thousands of eons ago of the rivers changing courses have settled, and they form pockets of different quality water in that particular area. They could drill 100 yards away and might not have any of it.
Was it Melville? Yeah, Melville is just south of Natchitoches and near the Red River, and was one of the first French communities in Louisiana. Now, ma'am, if you would tell us your name and your question.
Henrietta Morisky.
Henrietta Morisky.
What else can be done with solids collected in water and waste?
Oh, in solids and wastewater, or?
He's going to address waste in just a few minutes.
Yep,
Hang
that'll
on
be.
to your question.
Okay, I have one more. Can I?
Yeah.
Sure.
What is the fluoride content in the Lafayette City water?
Let's see, is it point?
2 parts per million.
Yeah, 2 parts per million, I think. It's a little less than 2 parts per million because I think the state would like to have us fluoridate our water, and I think it's 2 to 2.5 is where they'd like to have it at. But our particular water is so close to the fluoridation levels that occur naturally that we don't see any particular need to jump into excess fluoridation of our water to our consumers right now.
One more question. Yes, in the back with the yellow hat.
Yes, could you comment on the comparison between your water and bottled water, like the stuff we buy at Albertsons?
Our stuff is cheaper. The qualitative water is very good. I mean, the stuff you buy at the store has been filtered. It's going through an activated carbon filter. They use ozone. We use chlorine because we're distributing that water. That bottled water has been ozoned, but if you try to, there is no residual. It is what it is. It's a water in a plastic bottle, but it's been filtered, it's been ozonated, and it's safe. But it doesn't have the carrying quality that we have in our particular water, which I think personally is a lot better.
Oh, the personal carrying. I remember Dr. Pat Rickles used to carry around one of those bottles of water and refill it from tap water because it was just easier to carry that way. Let's see, a 30-second question. Yes, ma'am.
Linda Cormier, you mentioned what we should do for discoloration of water to fall in, but is there anything else that we should be alert for as far as reporting any other suspicion of contamination?
Let's just say that if I guess the Department of Health and Hospitals, if you had a group of people going to the hospital and they all have a similar ailment, then the hospital is going to call the Department of Health and Hospitals and say, look, we got a cluster of stuff going on in this particular neighborhood. Then they're going to come to us and they're going to start checking our water supply. They're going to check for chlorine levels. They'll pull samples and check for minerals, any other bacteriological things that might be occurring in that water that maybe we didn't foresee, or that might be a line that broke, or in the worst possible cases, you might have a guy coming in there with a contractor to tap into a line, and he taps into the wrong line. And he's putting stuff into our particular line that we didn't know about at the particular time, but that kind of stuff is very rare. But I wouldn't say, that's difficult to determine, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next speaker, please. And here is Mr. Harold Scheffler, whom I guess most of you know, who's been working on saving our ecosystem since '68. And go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. I'm honored to be here, and I think I'm the only one not paid to be here, so I'm going to try to the Chico Aquifer, what a wonderful asset. You know, it's dropped 50 feet probably in the last 100 years. If you go to the Oglala, it's dropped 200 or 300 feet. And they were in Florida, the aquifer below Miami and Everglades had dropped almost 1,000 feet. So by comparison, we're in pretty good shape. What are the insults? What are the problems that we would anticipate with the Chico? One of the things is somebody could come take it. The state and the Sierra Club got very involved in this about 10 or 12 years ago. We went to the legislature and said, you know, we have no way to control someone taking the water from the surface or from our aquifers. And so we pleaded with the state to set up a plan to study what other states are doing. And our goal was to say, look, take the 5 or 6 states around us, and whatever they're charging for the water, average between Mississippi, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, I believe was the states we chose. All of these folks charge for water, both surface and groundwater. We don't charge anything. We have no controls. You can put anything anywhere. There's no permits required. I think there's a permit if you put in a well that's producing more than 2 billion gallons per day. So you know, if you want to avoid the permit, you know, you want to pump 5 million a day, you just put 3.5 million wells in, whatever. Easy to avoid. So there's a threat there. Texas is starving for water. Could hire a competent hydrogeologist and buy 5 or 6 acres right over the Sabine and just pump all they want. There's nothing to stop them. And so we have nothing. One of the few states in the country that have no rules on the sale of or the taking of. We have a right of taking. Once you take it, it's yours. Something to think about. And groundwater is not like oil and gas. The oil and gas that's under your property belongs to you, but the groundwater belongs to the state. It belongs to all of us. So that's a very important legal point. So there's a threat there that other states could come and take it from us one way or another. There was even a plan to take water from the Mississippi and pump it to the Everglades. Just run a pipe. There's an $11 billion plan to recharge the aquifer below the Everglades. It's the biggest water recharge program on earth. And somebody figured, well, we could put a pipe from the Mississippi and send that water across the Gulf to the southern Florida, much cheaper than $11 billion. And Louisiana has no rules. We can take all the water, anybody can take all the water they want. So there's even been plans to pipe water to New Mexico and west, taking the water from the Mississippi from Louisiana, because again, we have no rules. Other big threats include salinity. In agriculture is the biggest use of the Chico water, probably 2/3 of the use, maybe more than that. And in these areas where you have these enormous agricultural pumps, you tend to pull a plume of saline water from a saline zone that's about 150 feet below the bottom of the Chico. Chico bottoms out at about 800 feet. You got about 150 feet of clays or whatever, and then you got a 2,000-foot highly saline aquifer that takes the place of the Chico as you go east toward Jeanneret. From Jeanneret to New Orleans, we use surface water. We can't use groundwater. It's highly saline. It is that saline aquifer that is below the Chico. So high pumping can pull a plume of saline water into the Chico. And then during drought periods, we can actually pull water from the Gulf up the sands of the Vermilion and the Murrumbidgee, other waterways that have these sands that follow the rivers. And so it's a threat both in vertical and horizontal pulling. And that's occurred in the Vermilion before the test Vermilion was put in. During the high pumping rice period, salt water would come all the way up to the Vermilion to the point where they had to stop pumping. So the test Vermilion cured a lot of that. So then we have surface pollution, another big issue, because one of the most ignored environmental consequences of dredging waterways, canals and pipelines, whatever, is no one does a hydrogeologic survey to determine if we would be breaking through and piercing natural barriers that divide surface water from groundwater. The worst case of that nationwide is the Calcasieu. Calcasieu historically was about 15 foot deep. It had about a 15-foot barrier between the Chico and the surface waters of the river, and we dredged right through it. So all the surface pollutants of the plants around Lake Charles goes right into the Chico, right in that region. We did the same thing on the Vermilion. Vermilion, especially going through North Vermilion Parish, we dredged right through the protective barrier. And I know that because the Boy Scouts have a camp, Camp Steen, and we drilled wells. We drilled 6 wells. The deepest was almost 700 feet to get good water right there just north of Amberville. And whenever we tested the water, we could test the Vermilion and test the water. The fecal count was exactly the same, even at 600 feet. So you had water-bearing sand where the surface pollutants of the Vermilion were going right into the water system. So issues like seismograph work, and Lafayette Parish was very helpful with this, and as well as other parishes. To do a seismic boring, you got to drill about 300 feet. So you're drilling right into the aquifer. And you need 400 or 500 gallons of water to do that. Well, the seismic company would go to the nearest ditch and fill their tank, and then they were polluting from Boudreaux's well. And so the parish passed a regulation that to drill these seismic wells, you have to use potable water. The main parish did the same thing. Several other parishes, Acadia, did the same thing when they realized that this was an insult to the groundwater system. The fact that we have enormous wetlands, man-made wetlands, crawfish ponds, rice fields, marshes, the Chapelai Basin, those are all recharge zones that are limiting this amount of drawdown that is occurring in the Chico. So we're very fortunate. 50 feet is very, very small compared to aquifers around the country, because we do have this outstanding recharge taking place all the time. And I know we have almost 200,000 acres of crawfish ponds now that normally would be pasture land. So that's contributing on the plus side of taking care of the Chico. It is an enormous asset. It's certainly threatened in many, many ways. Lafayette's wells are probably some of the safest. The wells around the golf course have when you go about 50 feet down, you have a highly compressed shale of about 48 feet. And below that, you have almost 500 feet of highly compressed, high-density clay. So it's very difficult for any surface contaminants to reach our particular well sites. Now, if you go down towards the south end of Lafayette, that's an open aquifer. That means surface water can go right into it. So, but generally, we probably have some of the best water in the country. By the way, bottled water is not tested. His water is tested every day. It's required by law to be tested every month. But bottled water, you can put anything in it, you know, it's really not safe to drink. There's even a question about the plastics that it's carried in as that being a contaminant. So with that, I'll close and say, I'll answer questions.
Thank you very much. First question. First hand, yes. Give us your name and your question.
Geraldine Bowie Hill. I have a two-part question. Part one, does the Chico Aquifer abut anywhere with the Tuscaloosa Shale? And the second part is, if it does, could fracking on the Tuscaloosa Shale affect the quality of the water in the Chico Aquifer?
Ma'am, I think fracking is done in virtually all new wells. The Tuscaloosa wells are 11 to 12,000 feet. The current ones being drilled, that's all new pipes, new equipment. Not likely there would be any communication between the fracking. The fracking is releasing that, you know, high pressure water into the zone 2 miles down. So for that to come back up is just, it's hard to think of or visualize in what condition that would occur. Geologists would be a lot better at explaining this, but it's very unlikely any fracking fluids would ever come up into an aquifer that's only 300 or 400 feet deep.
Another question, please. No, you've already had one turn. Everybody gets to have one turn before anyone else has a second. Yes? Another question. Yes, sir. Your name and your question.
Whitney Broussard. Mr. Harold, do you know of any evidence of saltwater intrusion into the Chico Aquifer on the southern end from the Gulf, especially as sea level is rising?
Yeah, sea level rise is a tough question. You know, the loss of the marshlands is a big issue. The hurricanes, you know, inundated that entire region with, you know, seawater, with 3%, 3.5% salt water. So the White Lake, Grand Lake system is just now, you know, after 5 years, getting rid of their high salinity from the hurricanes. So, but there is definitely, especially when you get towards Gaydon, the Florence Club, that region, during drought periods where you have enormous amount of agricultural wells going, there definitely is a plume that comes up in a horizontal fashion from the Gulf to the point that wells on the southern end have to be shut down. So they're getting salinity at, you know, 4 or 5 parts per thousand.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Scheffler. Let's give him a round of applause. All right, as we continue in our study, our next speaker is, again, Mr. Craig Goutreau, and he is going to explain wastewater.
Wastewater. Y'all thought the water people had rules. Wastewater is governed basically originally by EPA. Again, they set lots of standards by us to abide by. Then, over the last couple of years, our permits, we used to have 2 different permits. We had one for the Environmental Protection Agency, and we had one for the Department of Environmental Quality. And we had to meet both of them. And both of them sometimes had different parameters to meet. Now we have a convergence of EPA letting the Department of Environmental Quality do their business in regulating our particular discharges to the Vermilion River. Back in the old days, the Vermilion River was a very polluted source. It was not fit for fishing, swimming, anything. That's when the treatment facilities, they started hammering the treatment facilities to get after it. You have what's known as point discharges and non-point discharges. Point discharges are the pipes at my wastewater plants that go directly into the Vermilion River. Non-point is the agricultural activities, the farms, the cattle raising, horse raising farms and sugarcane production, that you have fertilizers and manure and everything else that goes on this, and when the rains hit, all that flows into the Vermilion River. I do not have control over those particular parameters going into the Vermilion River. That's why they give us permits on our point source discharges. The only problem with that is that in the future, those point source discharges are going to get even tighter on the permit limits. In our particular permits, we're permitted for what's known as total suspended solids, and that's the little particles of dirt you might have in a cup of water. All right, we have to maintain like 10 parts per million, which is very little. We have what's known as biochemical oxygen demand component, which means how much of the organics, after you flush the toilet, how much of the organics are remaining in that water before it goes to the Vermilion River. And there's a permit limit set like a 15 parts per million. We have ammonia. Every time you go to the restroom, you flush an ammonia down. I've got to get rid of it. It comes in around 23 to 25 parts per million, and I got to get it down to less than 5. All right? All these components require money and a lot of capital improvements, because the tighter the limit gets, the more treatment capability I have to put into my particular facilities in order to meet these new demands. Sooner or later, the Department of Environmental Quality, in conjunction with the EPA, is going to set a certain amount of solids that the Vermilion River can carry. We have, all of our people in the parish have little portable treatment facilities. All that water flows down the coulees, flows into Vermilion River. I cannot control that right now. What the Department of Environmental Quality is looking at for the future is that we collectively make some regional facilities that all these little package treatment facilities can flow into, and then discharge to a larger municipal facility that can treat it to a higher level. The only problem with that is it's a matter of cost. Who's going to pay for all those improvements? Back in 1999, the EPA came to us and said, look, y'all having overflows in the street. We need you to get rid of all sewer overflows after a rain event. They've got to go. You cannot have the manhole cover rattling on top of the roadway. We spent close to maybe $60 million to solve most of that problem. I cannot stop like this 8-inch rain event that we had a couple of weeks ago. I'm throwing up my hands on those particular events because I cannot stop those. But in the future, those things will need to be addressed, and it's going to have to be a whole community effort of Lafayette Parish to get it done. The residuals from the treatment plant, I know this is pretty quick, but basically my treatment plants are giant bug farms. And as long as you give them oxygen, and as long as you give them food, every time you flush it, give them some good food, they're happy. And we're able to treat it. It's when I lose my oxygen or I lose my bugs in my facility, that's what does the treatment to get it back to the purity of the water that you need. And right now, I can take a glass of city water and I can get a glass of wastewater from our wastewater treatment facilities, which we have 4 of them. It's going to be hard to tell the difference between the two waters. It is that clear. We impart more oxygen in the river than the river has. So we're doing all we can. And at that, I'll conclude.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Quick round of applause. All right, we're going to move quickly along to Bess Foret, who has come to us also from the city parish government, and she is in environmental quality management.
That's right. I work for Public Works and Lafayette Consolidated Government, and part of our duties is we manage the stormwater discharge permit that Lafayette government has with the state DEQ. Craig mentioned non-point source runoff. And that's what that permit addresses. It addresses everything that's going down our storm drain system. It picks up all those pollutants as it runs through the city and enters into the Vermilion River or any waterway. This is a permit that's not only in Louisiana that municipalities have to have, but all over the country. We in Lafayette, our stormwater is not treated. Most municipalities, the stormwater is not treated. There are some combined systems in other parts of the country that are, but everything that goes down the storm drain just, goes directly into the waterways. It doesn't go anywhere to get improvements. It doesn't go through the wastewater system at all. That's why, I don't know if y'all have ever seen the no dumping drains to bayou decals that are out there on the next to, the curb and gutter systems, because we want people to realize that everything, if they're washing out paintbrushes or if they're dumping grass clippings, anything, it all goes into our waterways, and it's important to realize that does have an effect on our water quality. It all adds up. Some other things, since it's not treated, we want people to start realizing that it's all connected, that what you're putting down, it might be way far away from the Vermilion River, but the way that our waterways work, it will end up there. And I don't know if y'all have seen or noticed our signs that are around by Vermilion Watershed, keep it clean. We have these magnets to try to get that in people's minds that it is a watershed, it is connected, and none of that water gets treated. Craig mentioned, all that non-point source pollution that does end up in the waterways and the contamination that does pick up as it runs through all the parking lots, everything that the water can't soak in, it's going to pick up those pollutants, whether it's oil and grease, the stains that you see in parking lots that it gets picked up. He mentioned agriculture, pet waste. We have, unfortunately, those individual systems that people have that pump that discharge into roadside ditches that all combines in non-point source. And those are the kind of things that we're looking at with our discharge permit that Lafayette government has, is how can we cut down on that contamination? How can we get people to realize that there's certain things they can do in their homes or in their businesses that can help cut down on that. That also includes littering. That plays a part in the water quality. All this is trying to get the Vermilion River and throughout the country water bodies so that they can be fishable, swimmable, that fish can propagate in them, that all of the water quality is good enough for those things to happen. And different water bodies have different water quality issues. The bacteria, the fecal coliform that is used to indicate water quality here in the Vermilion does show that there can be high bacteria in the water, which is a problem, obviously, if you want to swim or fish or boat or anything that that water, you can't get it on you can't swim in it. So that's part of what we're looking at, to try to get people to realize those individual systems, they need to be cleaned, they need to be pumped. As long as we still have them around, as long as they're in existence, they need to be taken care of. Hopefully, that our water quality, if it's poor, that then turns their point sources to, they want to try to get that water quality better somehow. So it turns around that they're going to try to get those point sources to do what they need to do to improve on that bacteria in the water. That's what's considered point source pollution. We do have, the threats that are coming into the waterways. I think that they're actually, better than they once were. I think that more people do realize now the importance of our water and importance of putting things, into our water body. Before, it was almost seen as a dumping ground. Everything could just get thrown in there. It's washed away and we're done with that. And I think that we have definitely seen an improvement over people's knowledge and ideas and thoughtfulness about our water. We get calls, even if somebody sees somebody blowing the grass down the drain, people are aware of that that's not good, that can have an effect on our dissolved oxygen in the water, which affects our fish that live in the water. And we see those calls coming in and a definite change in the way people are living their lives and according with the waterways, which is such an important part of Louisiana, that it's good to have that connection with the water. We try to get information out to the public with these, what we call pride guides, which is just ways that you can do things around your home that help with that water quality, all that outreach, all those best management practices, as we call them, for people to implement helps. And so the contamination, the threat of contamination, I should say, is still there. There's definite problems, but I do think I see an improvement in the way that citizens are handling those pollutants now. Expectations for future management of stormwater. What we're trying to do is for people to see stormwater not as something that you use as a dumping ground that leaves, but as a resource. You know, if you can catch that water on site, if you can get it to infiltrate the ground and maybe help with the aquifers, if you can get it to utilize in your own yard or in, you know, if, for your own uses, that's the way we want people to think of it. If you keep it on site for a little bit longer during a storm, it cuts down on that huge amount of runoff that rushes through those coulees and causes erosion and causes those kind of problems. We're promoting rain gardens. If you use your natural contours of your yard and there's a low spot, if you can hold that water there with some plants that you know, like the water, irises, whatever, that's a benefit. We also have a program with LUS that we're promoting people to start using rain barrels in their yard. They catch the water. It helps conserve their water use as well as helps water your plants during the summer when it's so hot and dry. You have that good rainwater that's the best thing for the plants. And so those kind of ideas to where we want our water to be part of our lives and use it correctly and not just try to get it out of here as fast as we can. That will help with the water quality and with the quantity of everything that's leaving the site. We also, just to kind of see if these BMPs are working, so we'll have an idea what we need to do. We are trying to get some ongoing real good sampling of our water, of what's happening in the coulees and the river, so that maybe we can pinpoint, well, this area seems to be having these issues, so that we can do some more education, do something to help improve that water quality. And if we can utilize that data, I think it will in the future also help improve our water here in the parish.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful. The League has also studied recycling, and we have in the library, every library in the parish has a little stand with voting cards, and it also has a little card with what should go in your recycling bin. And now if we have questions about what to do with those noxious items that should not go, what's the phone number or how to reach for information? 291-8529 is our general office number. If you have any questions, are you referring to like the Household Chemical Day? Yes. To get rid of those things, you can call and they'll let you know when. We usually have 2 of those days a year. That's to get rid of paint, chemicals, those kind of things. They'll answer all your questions. If you're just trying to figure out how to get rid of an old, you know, refrigerator or, you know, any of those kind of items, we'll answer the questions. That's another thing this book is for. We have several y'all can take. It's online. It really is very, very useful around the house to answer questions about recycling, large item pickup days, you know, for curbside garbage pickup, chemical days, stormwater issues, asbestos, you know, just, you know, everything that we can think of to try to help a homeowner, business owner in the parish. Thank you very much. Now listen, help me with remembering this.
8529.
8529. All right, thank you very much. And we need to move on at this point to the Bayou Vermilion District.
Okay.
Please.
All right, thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank also the League of Women Voters for inviting and assembling us here, and thank you all for coming to listen to this discussion, which is very important. You know, water is essential to life. You know, and in French, we have an expression when a young couple first starting in life, on dit sa vie d'amour et d'eau fraîche. You know, all they need to live at first is with love and fresh water. You know, so it puts pretty much love and fresh water on the same, you know, same plane of existence. So, to how important is it? Second, well, I'd like to start off by answering a question somebody asks me, and I hear often, say, why do we say Bayou Vermilion and Vermilion River? Are the two interchangeable? And the answer is basically yes, because 5,000 years ago, The Vermilion was actually two different bodies of water. One north of about Rotary Point was a bayou, and south of that was part of the ancient Mississippi River channel also, because as you know, the Mississippi River throughout history has always found the shortest and quickest route to the Gulf of Mexico until the flood of 27, and we started building the levees and whatnot. And now, if it weren't for those levees, of course, it would be going straight through Morgan City, the Chaffalite Basin also. So that's why we say the Bayou Vermilion or Vermilion River, because it has characteristics of both through its history up to 5,000 years ago. I was also asked answer a couple of questions about how is the Bayou Vermilion District administered. We are, of course, a taxing entity. We receive 0.71 mils through property taxes to administrate, which generates about last year was $1.28 million, which we dedicate toward all of our projects along the river. Also, we have two-man crews that are on the bayou just about every day, picking up trash, taking out dead trees, sometimes cattle, sometimes cars, sometimes flat screen TVs. We took out over 200 tires out of the bayou last year. We've taken out about 30 tons of trash. When I say trash, I mean just styrofoam, plastic bottles, and aluminum. So, individually it does not weigh a whole lot, so you can imagine the volume of trash we pull out of the bayou every year. The Bayou Vermilion District is also a 9-member commission, also, who are named either by the city parish president, the city parish council, or the area mayors also. So we are a political entity also. And what are the goals for the use of Vermilion? Well, as we've discussed today, our goal, particularly by the Vermilion District, not only to keep the trash, pull the trash out of the bayou, keeping it out is something we're working with LCG to prevent it from getting into the coulees before it gets to the bayou, to make our job a lot easier. But I really would like to see more recreational use of the bayou. Also, to that end, also part of our budget is dedicated to the construction of new canoe launches, improving some of our existing parks. Even I know we also have a park called Southside Park, just south of the Elwha Broussard Bridge, next to the lime and shell yard they have down there. We're just redoing the gazebo. We're building a new boardwalk. A lot of people use that for fishing. We also like to see more fishing, of course. So anything that we can do to help propagate fish along the bayou, we're all for that also. Also, we'd like to see more construction of like pervious pavement parking lots also at Vermilionville, where we have our headquarters. We have demonstration areas where we can show people who wish to build parking lots where the water would actually seep through the gravel and whatnot to filter the water out before it goes back into the water table. Instead of having these flash flood events, literally, like we see water just coming streaming off of parking lots into the cement-filled coulees. And I'm sure you've seen like Coulee Mean. I'm sure y'all have driven down Johnston and whatnot, and looking down and see Coulee Mean. Almost half expecting, somebody with a raft and a helmet on going down the rapids. But all that goes straight into the Vermilion, and the Vermilion, when it's flowing at a good clip, is only moving at 3 feet per second. So there's a lot of backup. So that water's rushing it at a lot more than 3 feet per second from a lot of different directions, and water will block itself. It'll create a water dam. So once that water comes in, and there's no place for it to go, there's only one place for it to go, is straight up. So that's part of what has caused some of these flood events we've seen 3 times in the last 10 months, contributing to that the water not going anywhere to go except people's houses in Carencro, which is something that we hopefully work on also. Another part of the problem is the bridges. A lot of the bridges that cross the Vermilion also, as the water goes past the pilings in the bridge, the water slows down on the other side, so that creates a sandbar. So you'll have, in some places, you have as much as 3 feet of difference between the front end of the bridge and the upstream end and the downstream end of the bridge. And that water also has to go up 3 feet also. And so instead of going, if it can't go up 3 feet, it'll go back up. And the last rain event we just talked about, when we had the 8 inches of rain, the water was actually moving at 3 feet per second, over 5,000 cubic feet of water per second going north. Going the wrong way, and that water has to go somewhere. It has to go back south eventually. So that's why the water stayed so high for so long. So those are some of the problems that we're trying remediate. Where does the Vermilion water come from? Well, besides rain, as I talked about, also, of course, the water is pumped in through the Tesh Vermilion Freshwater District, just north of Krotz Springs. On the Atchafalaya River, there's a huge, well, you have a pretty big plant there. There are 5 1,500 horsepower electric pumps that pump or not pump water into the Bayou Côte Bleue, which eventually goes into Bayou Fusilé, which eventually goes into Bayou Vermilion, which eventually also goes into the Bayou Teche also. And they're under law at different parts of the year have to keep the water level between 15 and 16 feet above sea level also. And they do a very good job, I must admit, of keeping that water where it needs to be for the different agricultural uses also, the sugarcane farmers and the crawfish farmers, especially along Bayou Teche. Our main benefit here on the Vermilion is that the water keeps flowing. You know, we talked about if the water slows down, the salt water will start backing up, and that'll start affecting the Chico Aquifer, because, as was mentioned, also the Bayou Vermilion River, I guess at that point, it does contribute to the Chico Aquifer. Water from the Vermilion does flow into the Chico Aquifer, so it helps replenish the water in our drinking water also. So what are the current uses of this water? Well, like I said, basically, I would like to see more recreational use. You know, we have at Vermilionville and along other areas along the bayou, we have these canoe launches. Like I said, have installed. So I think the more we get people out there on the bayou to enjoy it for recreational purposes, the more they'll see, hey, why is that Coke can floating down there? How did that get in there? You know, what can I do to get it out of there? Because we do have a lot of natural beauty. I mean, if you go north of Vermilionville, past the airport, on toward Carencro and whatnot, within 5 minutes, you will think you're in the Amazon. I mean, you wouldn't believe that here, but we have a 7-foot alligator that not too far from Vermilionville that I see just about every day. We have alligators in our ponds also. So we live in this natural setting. We think when we look outside, we see this beautiful building with the neon lights, and we see all the parking lots and the cars going by. But we live in a swamp, people. We are the swamp people. Don't forget that, okay? And we have a tendency to forget that. So we have to learn how to deal with all of these different restrictions that living in this most beautiful part of the country, I believe, and I'm sure you do too, encumbers. So we have to be good stewards of the water as it is sent to us, and we have to learn how to enjoy it to its maximum.
Wow, big round of applause. We have 1 minute, one question.
Okay.
Yes,
Dennis Sullivan, what is the relationship between Vermilionville and Bayou Vermilion District?
Well, Vermilionville is run by Bayou Vermilion District. When 1984, when Bayou Vermilion District was created, it was not only to clean up one of the most polluted waterways in the United States, which is saying a lot, of course. It was also part of economic development. So clean water is also part of economic development. Like I said, for ecotourism, people come here not only to appreciate our Mardi Gras we just saw, and some of our great musicians like Mr. Terry Duval we have right in front of us here, but also our natural resources we have. So, and also part of that was economic development for tourism. So Vermilionville was conceived in that same vein as part of the economic tourism development of Lafayette Parish.
All right, well, with that, I'm going to call our wonderful meeting to a conclusion. One more big round of applause. They're sharing their time as well as volunteering their time for us, and I really commend each of you for coming out to learn. And please join us as we continue to learn, and you might even like to join the League of Women Voters